When Matt Reeves' The Batman released in 2022, it instantly became my favorite Batman movie ever. Yes, even over The Dark Knight. Now, I know what that's going to get me, and you can argue with me about it in the comments if you want, but that is a hill I'm going to die on. Matt Reeves' The Batman is my all time favorite Batman movie, and I personally think that it's the best. I really do. And because I loved it so much, when I heard that it was, of course, getting a sequel, but its universe was expanding with the TV show on the Penguin, I got pretty excited. Now, the Batman film had, a more grounded approach to Batman, but it had some more superhero y elements to it. It's a Batman movie, of course, it's going to have those things. But the Penguin series' marketing materials showed that despite taking place in the same exact universe and this being the exact same character from the film, would not only be technically a superhero show, it was going to be a crime gangster drama, which intrigued everybody that was in anticipation for this show. And the show dropped, and it may arguably be better than the Batman movie. So I was gonna review the premiere for Batman Day, but as I began to record that video, I stopped and said to myself, "Well, no, let's wait. Let's watch the whole season first." Because there's one consistent problem that a lot of these streaming only shows tend to have, and it's that they start off really strong and then somehow, some way, they just take a horrible decline in quality. It happened with Rings of Power, where the first two, three episodes were really good, and then they just didn't know what they were doing. Monarch Legacy of Monsters, where the entire first half was really good. It started off nonsensical, but that first half was really good, and then it just went off the deep end. It's so crazy how a lot of these shows are like that. So I wanted to wait because I didn't want my hype and love for that first episode to just be wasted and deflated all because the rest of the 7 episodes would just be garbage. So I decided to wait and watched it week by week. And man, this thing stayed consistently, I'm gonna say it, perfect the entire way through. Laura LaFranc here. Matt Reeves is not directing. He's only producing. Laura LaFranc is the showrunner. She has brought this show and made something that can be taken very seriously despite its source material and despite the content that it comes from. Comic books and superheroes used to be seen as this thing just for children, right? And it's evolved so far. Watching this, it doesn't feel like a Batman property. It in fact feels like any other original crime drama series that HBO would air. And I actually think that's really great because for those of us that grew up with this stuff, I think it's really great that we can still have it and it grow up with us. We had it when we were kids and it inspired us and we loved it, but we can still have it and we have a more mature version of it. This version of the Penguin is actually performed so well by Colin Farrell that I think we're done getting the wah, 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 yeah, say version of the Penguin. I don't think we're ever going to see that again, especially since in recent uh, Batman properties, the Penguin has been drastically different from what we've known him to be before. And I don't think we're ever getting that classic version again, at least not for a long while. There's going to be a lot of imitators to Colin Farrell's Penguin after this version of the character has run its course. At the end of every episode on the Max streaming platform, they do like this behind the scenes look into the episode type thing. And I watched it for the last episode. And in it, Colin Farrell does speak. And I was genuinely shocked when I saw him. Not because I'm not familiar with Colin Farrell as an actor, I am, but because the contrast between his performance as Oz and Colin Farrell himself is just that stark. I don't know what Colin Farrell pulled out of himself or what magic spell he did or what to pull this performance out of himself, but it's so good and it may be the best adaptation performance of a Batman villain since maybe Heath Ledger's Joker. Now, I'm not saying this performance is better than Heath Ledger's Joker. No, what I'm saying, it's on the level with it. I think we have a pantheon going on here for Batman villain performances, and while Heath Ledger's Joker, of course, created the gold standard from there, I think Colin Farrell's Penguin is sitting right next to him on that Mount Rushmore of performances. I really think it's that good. And I've seen other people agree to that as well, that it's a very good performance. I'm not seeing anyone praise it that highly like I am, but I really do think that because when you're watching it, you forget that it's another person inside of that makeup, inside of this suit, inside of that clothing, behind that accent. You wouldn't know that it's Colin Farrell if you weren't told. In 2022, when the first Batman dropped, I had heard beforehand that Colin Farrell was playing the Penguin, and when I was watching the movie, I kept cocking my head and I was like, is it? Is that really Colin Farrell? It was kind of incredible. This show, and Oz in particular, are so well written that a lot of us watching this show were actually rooting for Oz, despite us knowing that he is a villain, that he's not a good guy, and the beginning of the show shows that. We still rooted for him because he's, for all intents and purposes, the protagonist of the show. He's not a protagonist, but he was the one that we followed. He was the one we focused on. So we ended up rooting for him later on in the show. You know, you bring in Sophia Falcone. She seems worse than him. And he fooled us all, essentially, right? Now, the ending of this series, what Oz does at the very end to a certain character, which I'll get into in a little bit, shocked a lot of people. A lot of people really hated this ending. Not in a bad way, you know, it was just they really hated Oz for what he did, but I really wasn't. Now, I'm not saying that I saw it coming. I'm not gonna pretend I was that smart that I saw it coming, but I will admit that in the middle of the season, I was actually getting a bit manipulated by Oz, like all the other characters. I was like, yeah, okay, I'm rooting for this guy. You know, everyone is just against him, right? Which is exactly what this character would want out of the audience for them to see his side of things. But by the time that thing that he does happened, I didn't gasp, I wasn't shocked. I just thought, you know what, no, it makes sense. This was always going to happen. One thing that I actually think I picked up on that I've not seen a lot of people really speak about is a line that Oz throws out at the beginning of the season. So he has Victor, and he's driving him around. I believe it's Crown Point, and while they're driving through, Oz is looking out the passenger window, and he sees the destruction left by the floods that happened at the end of the Batman film, and he says, "Look at this! Look what that madman did!" Right? And I thought to myself, what does he mean there? Who is he talking about? Is he talking about the Riddler, or is he talking about Batman? The reason I ask myself that is because a lesser show would have had Oz say that and then had Victor go, "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" And then have Oz explain his thought process. But they didn't, because it's a better show than that. And I think them not explaining what Oz meant means one of two things. One, it's open for interpretation, and I'm taking that interpretation like I am now. Or two, you're supposed to know what he's talking about. Something that we've always known about comic book villains in general is that they never agree with the hero, right? They always find them to be a menace. They always think that what they're doing is wrong and what the villain is doing is right. And Batman villains, of course, are not going to like Batman. And maybe in a way, a guy like Oz probably sees that maybe this terroristic act by the Riddler wouldn't have happened if Batman didn't exist. This is something that's been common, Batman media anyway, where they feel like, oh, he's the vigilante, he's the one that's the problem, not me, right? I'm just trying to get my way in this world because Gotham won't let me, and Batman is impeding me on doing that. So I personally believe that he was referring to Batman there, and if he was, that would have been the hint that, yeah, don't trust Oz too much. At the end of the day, he's still a villain. He doesn't agree with the hero, and you shouldn't agree with him. Okay, so moving from that, leading into my next point, I'm going to talk about the shocking moment at the end of the finale of the show. If you haven't seen the whole series yet, if you haven't watched any part of the series yet, I'm going to do a pretty big spoiler here. So if you plan on watching The Penguin, you're free to click away now. That way you don't have to hear it. Go watch the show. Come back and watch the video, and you can give me your interpretation on what I'm about to say. If you have seen this show and you're going to stick around, here goes. So Oz's murder of Victor Aguilar was always going to happen. And I've seen people speculate, oh, well, and even in the behind the scenes thing, they say, that was him getting rid of his weakness. He didn't want a family. He feels like he needs to fully become the monster he was always going to be or wanted to be. He needs to rid himself of all those connections. But I don't believe that he ever saw Victor as any kind of family or was worried he would be. I think Victor was always a means to an end. He never cared about him. He only kept him alive at the beginning of the series because he thought, okay, well, this will be something that this kid can be a pawn for me, right? He's gonna be my foot soldier, my grunt, right? And then near here at the end, he was done with him, right? One big moment for me that tells me that he never cared for Victor at all, not even a slight little bit, was the episode, I believe it's episode 3, where Victor is speaking to his girlfriend, and she's pretty much begging him to leave Gotham with her. There's nothing left for them there. And when Victor's going to tell Oz that he's going to leave, or rather he does in this nightclub, Oz loses his mind. He gets angry, right? And he tells Victor, so you're going to leave when I've given you all of this? How could you do this? It was a very much how could you do this to me, right? Which is what a manipulative person like Oz does. They make you feel like the choice you're making is hurting them and that you're wrong in making that choice. That wasn't because he cared for Victor and wanted to keep him around. No, he wanted to keep his grunt soldier, his foot soldier, and manipulated him into staying. He played on his emotions that he had instilled in him. At that point, he knew Victor, had seen him as a hero, had seen him, as his higher up guy, and so he played on that. Oz is a mastermind at that, and so I believe that Victor's death was always going to happen. Another point I want to touch on very quickly is the idea of why wasn't Batman around for any of this? Wouldn't have any of these crimes have gotten Batman's attention? And, I know that it stands to reason that the superhero of a city would show up whenever there's crime happening in the vicinity. But I actually am glad that this show took the direction of keeping Batman completely out. And I think that there's a lore reason that's actually a good reason to not have had Batman involved. So, if you remember in the first Batman movie, if you've seen it, they actually established that that time period is actually his first year. He's very early on in being Batman. And the case that he's on for the Riddler is targeting upper echelon people of Gotham. So, I think what's going on here is, at least in the first film, is Bruce is just patrolling what he knows, an area that he knows, right? When it comes to Crown Point and a gang war happening, I don't think it's on his radar quite yet. And maybe we'll, see him grow into becoming that Batman that has that protection veil over all of Gotham. But for right now, what's going on is he just has his sights on that area of Gotham that he knows. He's starting off small. And he's, of course, going to become the Batman we know later on. And I think that is pointed out on the very last shot of the show when we zoom out from Oz's penthouse and we see the bat signal in the sky. It's signifying he's coming. Everyone needs the Batman's help. And so that beacon is the signal that he's going to start doing that. By the way, I really liked the kid they chose to play the little Oz in this, and I really liked how they wrote him too, because any other show that does like a flashback where it's, the main character just smaller, they have the kid do is do an impression of the older person, and they just talk like a kid. It doesn't come across authentic at all. And then in anime or something, when there's a younger version of the character, it's the same voice, just a higher pitch. A lot of shows are very lazy with that. They didn't do that here with this kid. I really respected that. So, if you couldn't tell by this point in the video, I am definitely all in on this new Batman universe. Everything that I've consumed from it so far has been top notch to me, and it's so new. I still need to read that Riddler Year One comic. I hear that that's pretty good too. But this show, man, it surprised me in a lot of ways because I knew that maybe I would like it, but I didn't expect it to be this good. And man, is it not only good, it's great. So, as I always ask, if you've seen the Penguin already all the way through, what did you think of the show? Do you want to see more? What did you think of Matt Reeves as the Batman? What do you think of this whole universe in general? Are you liking it? Are you not liking it? Do you feel like it's a bit too grounded, that Batman should stay more fantastical? Or do you feel like this is the direction Batman should be heading? Let me know down in the comments. Let's talk everything DC Comics, Batman, superheroes down there, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.